Happy Easter!
Hello, it's my fault we're late. My fault. But I'm going to blame my wife, actually. She can't cook on time.
Oh.
I'm going to get battered in a minute.
Oh my God, my light's falling down. Hold on a minute. Hold on, I just adjust my light. There we go, that's better. I was just trying to stop it from shining on my big slab. That's nicer. That's a bit better. Well, here we are. Do you know something? This is day 25. Angela, you have got to have the award for the swiftest, fastest person. I think you've come top of the comments more time than anybody else. It used to be Grace once upon a time.
Yeah.
She's been knocked off the spot by you, Angela. So Sarah's here. Hello. And happy Easter, happy Easter. Didn't mean that face. I didn't see the face. Maggie's here. Hello, Maggie. Hi from Wales. Pia's here. Hello. Grace is hey, Grace. Morning. Early in Australia. What time is it over there now in Australia? Because all our I might get my microphone back over here. Because all the clocks have changed, haven't they? That really foxed us today. I hate it. I've been sat looking at my clock on the wall that's been an hour ahead for the last 6 months, and now it's the right time. Morning. Ahoo, hi. Hello. Hi, says Facebook. You're 6:18 a.m. Yeah, you see, because we'd go live an hour later than this normally, wouldn't we?
We would.
Sorry, we're late. We've just been eating dinner. We just scoffed a roast. But no meat on mine. No, we didn't have any meat. It was all the other things, lovely things that go with it. It's great doing late yard in the daylight, though. Yeah, you still have daylight up there. It's pitch black here. It's pitch black.
But so what are we? An hour ahead.
Oh yeah, no. Oh, I don't know. It's doing
they're at 8 o'clock, aren't they, in the UK?
It's doing my head in. Sandra's here from Czech. Hello, Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
So what are we going to talk about? Grace says, I wondered why I woke up so late. Yeah, that's why. Because the clocks have changed. So what are we going to talk about this evening in the show? I wonder what we're going to talk about this evening in the show. We've had lots of people saying all sorts of things all over Facebook that we've been noticing. A little bit of something going on there. Marion's here. Hi, Marion.
Hi, Marion.
Karen. Hi, Karen. Sarah says, yeah, Tyria is the most daylight hours in the UK. Apparently, it's called the Sunshine Hour. Ew, is that so?
Oh, you learn something every day.
Yeah, I suppose because it's so far west. I had to think about that then. I nearly had to do never eat shredded wheat then. Yeah, it's still fairly light in Wales. That I'm sure
that's Wales.
That's Wales. That is definitely Wales. Evening from Spain. I see, Celia, you're starting the 15-day challenge. Interesting. Evening from Spain.
That's Janet. Hi, Janet.
Hello, Janet. Track systems for small spaces, please. Oh, I could talk about track systems for small spaces. Yes, I could. Let me just see if I can. Well, everybody's just coming in. Let me see if I can find. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I've got that one. I don't think. Yeah, that article. Let's just give that up a pump up.
Hi, Liz. Libby, I mean.
We can talk about that. She's got a little picture of her track as well. Libby's here. Yeah, track systems. Ooh, people want to talk about track systems. Your live is early today.
It's not for us because the clock's changed.
Yeah. For us, it's the same time, but the clocks have gone forward for us. I don't know what that does. What happens in the States? Do you stay the same? Do you? Are you on? Do you stay to go to summertime? I don't know. Anyway, we are. It is 9:20 in France, and it is. Well, I don't know what time it is everywhere else in the world. Right. Okay. Track systems. We can talk about track systems. What sort of things do you want to know? Let me show you. Let me show you this. Yeah, I'll show it to you in there, I think. So this is just remove that. This is an article that we put in the Barefoot Horse magazine a few years ago, and this is a story about a pony called Billy, and this is Billy here, and this is Tilly. So Billy and Tilly lived together, and they were, no joke, that's exactly what they were called, and they were taken on by this lovely lady called Lindsay, and she is a microbiologist scientist, and she came along to one of our talks. I don't know if she came to a workshop. She came to one of our talks. She became one of my lovely clients, and she took on this pony Billy and Tilly from this charity, but she didn't have a lot of land. At the back of her garden was really steep, and at the top she just had this sort of small area, and she built a track. Her and her husband built a track out of in less than half an acre. And this was this. Oh, hello. No, I didn't hate it when it does that. Go back. And this was the track. So the little, and it was on a bit of a slope. And down here, this is where their little area was, where her tack room was, and down there was the house. And used to come up here, and I'd trim around here in this area. And honestly, it wasn't far at all. It was a small little track. And then they put like seats in the middle. And she wanted to know whether by putting them on a track, Billy would actually lose weight with free choice hay. So not restricted at all. And I said to her, he will. And even though the track is small, they've got lots of movement because you can put the piles around and they're going to be moving each other. And when Billy came, he had quite stretched white lines and he had blood in the white line. And he'd been owned by an equine professional who gave him to the charity because she couldn't get him better. And as you can see, he's quite hefty there. And that's just them on their track. You can see just going down the hill because it was on a bit of a steep hill. So they had to work quite a bit to get around it, even though it was only little. And this was Billy's weight loss on the track. So he went from way up to, he was around about 318 kilos, I think. And then he just dropped and dropped. What does she say here? She said, I put out hay 3 times per day in several piles around the track so that they had to move around to get it all. For the first week or so, every time I went to give them hay, I had to increase the amount as they were eating everything I put out for them. I started to get a bit jittery. I had taken on the responsibility for the welfare of these ponies. Was I about to take a fat pony and make him even fatter? The shame of it. Thankfully, my trimmer, me, came out to trim their feet at about this point, and she reassured me that this was normal and to hold my nerve. And to hold my nerve, here I am, I'm on this bit. They would eventually self-regulate. Sure enough, as days went by, I started to find hay still left on the track, and I was able to reduce the amount put out. It was also noticeable that they were moving a lot on the track, and just a month after arriving with us, Billy's weight had dropped to 288 kilos. The most satisfying thought for me at this time was that Billy had lost weight without ever having to have felt hungry. We know that apart from the psychological effect this may have, there is also the fact that it feels like story time, doesn't it? Story time with Lindsay. We know that apart from the psychological effect this may have, there is also the fact that horses should not go for long periods of time without food, as their stomachs constantly secrete acid. And you know that now, don't you? The proton pump, you know all about that. The detrimental effects of this acid, which is left unbuffered by saliva and food, are now well documented. The notable thing about Billy was the change in his level of fitness. When he had first arrived on the track, Tilly would occasionally chase him around and he would have to slow to a walk going up the hills. However, after just a month, he was able to maintain his speed for much longer. One very thrilling moment for me occurred while sitting on our garden bench. She had a bench in the middle. Well, placed very calculatingly in the area of land in the centre of the track. See plan of the track. Billy came cantering round a bend, leaped over the poles, across the track, and then bucked and kicked a few times before hammering up the other side. His newfound agility was a delight to see. You can see in the graph Billy's weight. Oop, hello. You can see. Hold on a moment. Boop. You can see in the graph Billy's weight that he continued to lose weight quite consistently, but eventually reached a plateau. After 4 to 5 months, reached a plateau after 4 to 5 months. As we were now heading for colder weather, I was happy for him to be at this weight, especially as the fat pads were now much reduced in size and his crest was floppy rather than hard, and was also getting smaller. But what about Tilly? Well, her weight remained pretty stable. And she, like Billy, has shown no footiness whatsoever since they have been on the track. My trimmer has been pleased with the progressive improvement in Billy's feet, and neither of them has given us any cause for concern. Isn't that a lovely story? And she put at the end, she says, I think that weight loss on a track is due to a combination of factors. No grass, appropriate hay, low sugar, high fiber, species rich, increased movement, as well as access to varied foodstuffs such as barks, foliage, and herbs, which provides them with numerous compounds that not only may help with fat burning, but also to maintain healthy biochemical homeostasis. And you know that's what I'm all about, keeping balance. In other words, their bodies are functioning as they should be functioning. It is perhaps unquantifiable, but I am convinced that horses will eat what they actually need if the right environment is provided for them, and they can live in a way that is as close as possible to that in which they have evolved. I would have liked to have ended this article with a lovely photo of Billy looking sleek and handsome, but at the time of writing, he has a thick winter coat and an outer layer of mud, which combined make him almost as big as his original size. And there they are. Isn't that lovely? Ain't that nice? That's a
Lovely
nice
lady.
story. And she's the lady who went on to talk about, went on for us to research all about worms. That's the lady. And then also did some articles on, she did an article on lice. She did an article on mud fever, really interesting stuff that she found out, and, you know, from this lady. Yeah, fantastic article, says Libby. Sarah says, I'm going to try what you mentioned in the challenge about feather mites. Never thought to use a flea collar. So top tip for everybody watching, if you've got a cobby horse or a horse that's got a bit of itchy feathers, and this was passed down to me. I can't remember who told me this many years ago. This was a client who told me this. That I don't know whether you get these in the States or in other parts of the world, but certainly in the UK, you can buy flea collars, as in dog and cat flea collars that are in like a spiral. Now, I'm not all for chemicals, but when we have biting insects that are going to start irritating the horse, I'd rather get rid of them as fast as I can. And this is a really great targeted way of doing it without having to stick them full of frontline and ivermectin and stuff like that. And you just get these collars and you just put them like little bracelets around their pasterns, not tight, but close enough. And you just leave them there. And most horses tolerate them really, really, really well. You will get the odd horse that will try and bite them off, but that's that is actually very few and far between, but most horses tolerate them really well, and they work spectacularly at getting rid of feather mites. Just thought I'd drop that one in there. Hi, Caroline. Thank you for telling everybody in the group that I didn't know this afternoon. I said to Gary, "Oh, the clock's changed." He's like, "Yeah." You can use frontline flea treatment for mites. I have a shire and a cob. I use 1 pipette out of 5 mils on each leg, then repeat 2 weeks later. Don't, though, opt if you can for frontline injections or injections of flea treatments, because they can sometimes react adversely to the horses sometimes, and not all the time, of course, but I have known very bad reactions. I commented that long before you started tracks. Oh. Hi, says Meta. Hello. So yes, track systems. You know something? People put up tracks and they think, I've cracked it. I've got a track up. But have they cracked it, Gary? Necessarily.
Sometimes. Not always. Not always.
No. Not always.
It depends whether it's a bit like anything. It's a bit like hoof trimming. Track systems are brilliant if you do it properly.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I remember going to a client once, a lovely lady, and she'd put a track up and she had a big thoroughbred and her, I think it was a thoroughbred cross on this track. It spanned two sort of areas outside the back of her house. And she said to me, they're just wasting so much hay and they're not moving very much. And when I turned up, what she was doing, and she said, I'm doing everything you told me to do. I'm putting hay out all the time, but it's just not working. It doesn't work for my horses. So I turned up and I thought, let me go and have a look and see what you're doing. And sure enough, this track was absolutely covered in hay. Because what she was doing is she was just taking a pile, putting a bit here, and then going 2 steps and putting another pile, and then going 2 steps and putting another pile, and doing that all the way around. So the horses were just kicking it everywhere, weeing on it, pooing on it, eating a bit of it, and it was a mess. And they were just like, meh. And I said, oh, no, you can't do that. You put a pile here, and then go up to the corner and put another pile up there. And our rule of thumb on an entire track, if you've got 2 horses, you want to put at least 3 to 4 times more piles out than the number of horses that you have. So we do put around about 30 piles out. I was counting it the other day. We put a lot when we feed our horses. We've got big round bale feeders that are there all the time, or big round bales, and we also put out around about 30 piles, some on mounds loose. We put them in buckets. Sure, you get hay wastage, you do, but sadly that's part of it. And you'll also get hay wastage when they don't want to eat it as well, when they're like, nah, I'm not eating that bale, that's nasty. You can forget that. So you get that too. And procrastination is the worst thing. Because people want to do it, but they procrastinate because they're like, I can't surface it. But Sarah has just shown us this last week. She's just gone wild for it, getting a tractor in, surfacing it, getting new. I can't wait to see Squire go running out on that track, Sarah. I'm so looking forward to it. I'm quite excited. I think we should have like a proper evening. Everybody should sort of gather round and we should have sort of premiere, and maybe we should put a red carpet for Squire as well for him to go along. I think we all should be witnessing it live. I want to see it live. That's fantastic, but not everybody can do that. So if you can't do that, don't be crippled by going, I can't do all of that, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah, you can be like Billy and Tilly. You can have a tiny spot in this area, but if you've got a couple of horses, you can create this nice little track. And if you remember on her track, it wasn't just just straight round a rectangle, it meandered a little bit as well. Meandering tracks are great. Going across a middle is great. You know, there's so many things you can do to enrich that environment. So many things that you can do. But the hay bit and the putting enough hay out and getting those horses moving is very much often the biggest problem that people see, because they're not let me see if I can show you some pictures of my my old track. Is that going to load?
I think there's some common mistakes as well, because with the power of social media and the internet, you can very often look at the commercial track liveries and you think to yourself, oh my God, this is totally overwhelming. How can I produce that same thing for my 2 or 3 horses? Well, the simple answer to that is you don't. Because it's really not possible in a lot of cases.
No.
One of the big mistakes people make is actually making, particularly when it's going to be a grass track. And when I say a grass track, it means that you haven't got the facility to put a surface down. So you might be able to surface some of it, but some of it you won't be able to. So eventually it will just turn to dry ground, hopefully in the summer, that has got very little, if no, grass on it. But what people do tend to do is make them too wide. The whole idea of a track is to reduce the amount of grass, but increase the amount of movement. So as a general rule of thumb, for people that are doing this on their own land and there's only a certain amount of horses, you want the track to be no wider than your biggest horses long so they can turn around comfortably without getting zapped. But that's in the traveling areas. So when horses are traveling, it's a bit narrower. But if you've got areas that are loafing areas that they like to just hang out, they've got areas that they like to roll. We've got 3 areas that our horses like to roll at different times of the year. And it's one horse goes down and rolls, and then the next one, it's almost like they're queuing up for the same rolling spot. Those can be a bit wider. And it means it's more interesting as well, because it's not a set measurement all the way around. You're almost making a funnel. So when your horses are actually moving together, as it narrows, if you've got somebody coming up behind them, it means that they up the pace a little bit. Sometimes they up the pace a lot, depending who's following. So this is all little things that you can do. You can make it wider, make it narrower. You can put, if you're having some trees felled or trees just fall, you can put poles over, so they've got to actually step over. That helps with proprioception.
It helps with their body. It helps with. Remember Lee?
Movement,
Lee had a horse. One of our students had a horse, and he'd been raced a lot as a youngster, in little carts, and he was not in a good way. And they just put poles across the track, so he had to go over them. So they couldn't go round them; they had to go over them every day. They were wandering around the track. And when the body worker came back, the first time she came, she's like, "Oh God, you know." And she came back again in just a few weeks, and she went, "My God, what have you done to this horse? He's just completely different." He said, "I haven't done anything. I just put those poles across, and they just walked over it every day." And she's like, "Wow," because her advice at the time was, "Oh, see if you can do some pole work, just walking over poles a little bit every day." And he just thought, well, I'm not going to do that. What I'll do is I'll just put poles across the track. And they just did it themselves. Here is a picture of what my track looked like in Cornwall in the UK. And most of you are looking at that thinking, what is going on there? Well, this was an area down here that was concreted. All of this area down here, this path. Can you see my marker?
Yeah.
And that was
It's
my
small, but you can see it.
Yeah, that was my area where I had the field shelter, and this bit down the bottom was piggy land. And this is where our house was over here. And then we entered it here, and you can see all these tracks of where I had the quad. And you can see these very fake green lines. Well, when my first track started, it was just on the outer. It was just on this outer bit here. And you can see these mounds. I'd built mounds, and this is Cornish hedging. You could go green grass everywhere. So these are all mounds. A mound in each corner, look. And that's where I used to put a lot of the hay. And then I built a sort of section at the top, which was like a bit of an arena at the top. And we had little areas where I put hay out up there, little feeders. And then I had an area down here where I put loads of rocks, lots and lots of different rocks. So they had to walk around it. Here we've got mounds. This was a very big mound, so only the little ones tended to go up that mound. And yes, we've got it looks like a dead horse there. It's not dead. It's not dead. That it's sleeping. It looks like some horses actually in the middle. What's going on there? I don't even know if that is. I don't know. I can assure you that we use the middle to play with, so that might have been kids in there. We if you notice, you can see some obstacles, and on this track there are 18 horses, and you can't see them. There's one. Let's see if we can find some others. That's that one looking dead. Oh, there's one here. And you can see what I've done as I got more horses on my tracks. Definitely looks like horses in there, but I don't know if that is actually what we're looking at. And they were concentric rings, so they could get in there. They could get onto each track, but there were only one or two areas where there were exits and entrances. And so at the beginning, they were like, "Oh, I don't know where I'm going." But gradually, as time wore on, they got more and more used to how it worked. And so there's a horse up here, there's a horse here. We had trees this is in the winter, but we had trees that would offer lots and lots of shade. And yeah, it was muddy, and you can see it's not all surfaced. I had I don't know why that's not blowing up anymore. I had a big surfaced area. You can see this is all surfaced. All of this, in fact, is surfaced. It's just got a sort of thin layer of mud on it, but all of that is surfaced. And down here was the poo pile, and then very occasionally we'd turn the poo into other big piles. So that was my track. And having a quad was great because I could get to every single area that I needed to, but it didn't bother them having mud. They weren't bothered at all. So yeah, that was that. Let me just share you some other pictures. Let me show you this. The question was, Maggie said, how can I make my track? Maggie says, how can I make my track more interesting for my girls? We have lovely hedgerows around it for them to browse, but what else can I do? Well, you can put mounds in, right? So this is what I did. Look. Look at this one. So that's made of a mixture of building rubble that we'd had from we were doing some renovations, plus there'd been on there, there'd been a bit of soil, a bit of poo had been stuck in there as well. That's Darcy up there. And there's Oscar. And this was a friend of mine's horse. And you can see they're going up there and they're climbing. And hay was put up there and they absolutely loved it. And here's another one. Let me show you Darcy up on the mound again. There he is, up there on the top. And that's all Cornish countryside you can see in the background. We were on the side of a little hill. And foxgloves. Now, here's an interesting thing, right? So I routinely used to go around when I first had horses. We had loads and loads of foxgloves around my track. And I would routinely go around pulling them all out because they were toxic. Scared myself to death. that they used to grow, and I'd be so frightened. And then I can't remember why one year I just didn't keep on top of it, and then I realized that the horses weren't bothering with them anyway, and they just left them alone, and then that was it. I never bothered anymore after that, and they never went near them. But I again, I'd been made kind of paranoid about it. But yeah, it gets weedy, but the weeds are quite cool as well, because they have to sort of march in and out of the weeds. And mine was semi-permanent fencing. By that I had, if you look here, I'll show you. Let's just show you some more pickies. So this is semi-permanent. So this is wooden posts with electric rope. Nowadays, I don't use rope. I actually use wire. And they don't have a problem with it at all. And this was a big cob. And imagine what he would look like if he lived on grass alone. There's a tiny little bit of grass that you can see coming up in the summer, but it's very, very tiny amounts. Here is my hardcore area. And again, you've got this nice mound, and it grows weedy plants on it, you know, a bit of dock, some nettles, but it's actually, it changes the topography, and they make their own little paths along it too. And you can see how good these animals look. You know, these are animals that you would say had a hay only diet, but they haven't really, because they're wandering around. They've got hedges they can nibble on. There's little bits of greenery here, but I didn't give them. Here's a mound, and then you can see this path going up inside the mound, and we had Cornish hedges, so there were bits and pieces that grew on the hedges. But I didn't give well, at the start I used to give bag feeds and supplements, but as the number of my horses grew, there was absolutely no way. That's Menzo, there he is, that's a warm blood. And over the other side, look, is Splashy, and in order for him to get over to see Splash, he's got to walk all the way around. This is Coral. This was a little lamanitic pony, and you can see she's on the middle track. So that's the outer track, middle track, and then there's this one here. I don't even know if we'd opened it up there. Yeah, we had, by the looks of it. And that's a schematic of my tracks. You can see that all the dots, that's the hardcore. I have rocks in there. I had scratching poles. So that, Maggie, you can put big poles in the ground and just chuck them into the ground, and they can use that to scratch. Some people use the ends of brooms. I know that Bethan does that. Shame Bethan's not here, actually, because she'd tell you some of the things she does. But the ends of brooms, when the broom handle's broken off, or even when you just, you know, you've got a yard broom that you're not using, you can nail that to a big post, and they love that, and they can use that to scratch on. I had a big loafing area up here, another scratching post, field shelter down here, concrete path, lots and lots and lots of mounds. Mounds have been something that I have done that has followed me around everywhere, really. Wherever I've gone, I've put mounds. So here where we are in France, we've got lots of mounds as well. But I've got a little video here I can show you, which was my friend. Let's see if I can find it. Which one do I want? This one. My friend did this for me, and she lives in Cornwall, and she couldn't find a pasture for her horses because she had a little area that she had a track, but a track set up originally, but then she was moving to near Polperro in southeast Cornwall. And if you know that area of the UK, you probably don't, but it's a little fisherman's area, and there's the sort of land that you can get hold of is tricky. So she bought this very steep side of a valley, and it was so steep nobody else wanted it. And she said, this is going to be perfect. And she made this meandering track going back and forth. And this little video is let me just put that back up the top. This is a little video she did for me. I don't think there's any speaking on it. You can see there that they're pottering down the hill. Let's have a look at this one. I don't know if this is the right one, but I've got one where she's actually walking around the track. I don't think it's this one. It goes on for about 5 minutes. But you can see how steep it is. You can see how much he's trying to maneuver. And this was a horse that's very EMS. He's got lots of problems. Now, he's not lame. He's just taking his time coming down that very steep track. You can see how narrow she's made it in places. And she'd put hay up and down the hillside. Hello, little lady. Yeah. So there's so many things that you can do. So many things that you can do. And this is the result of an animal being on track for a few years. This mare came to me. So there she is. Have you ever seen a crest that big, folding over like that? She'd lived on grass. She'd been abandoned, basically. She was very overweight. She was old lady as well. I had her. We think she was into her 30s by the time she passed away last year. I'd had her for a long time, since just before 2013. And this was her big fat crest. And that was in 2013, large inflamed laminitic crest, pony living on a diet of consisting mainly of grass, huge reduction in laminitic crest, pony living on a diet of only hay. Well, she had nibbles around the outside, but you can see the big difference. And that took, it's not a fast thing. It's not an immediate thing. You're not after stunning weight loss straight away. It will just happen. I did nothing. Honestly, nothing. I just put her on a track. I fed her hay and nothing else. She didn't get any supplements, but she had a salt lick, a mineral block. She had that little bit of browsing around the hedgerows, and that was the result. And okay, one is in the summer and one's in the winter, but you can clearly see the difference in her lammy crest, how much it reduced. And it reduced even more than that too. And she went on to live till last year. And she was old. She was an old girl. And she died peacefully, incidentally, in the barn with hay. And I'd been over to yours, hadn't I, that night?
That's right, yeah.
And me and Tim
came over to ours.
And me and Tim, and we knew that she didn't have long. I wasn't allowed. I couldn't get near that. I could get near her, but because she'd been feral. It took some time, a few years, for her to trust us. But she wouldn't let me put a rug on her. There was no way she was going to have a rug. But in the last week of her life, when she was clearly on her way to Rainbow Bridge, I was able to put a rug on her. And we came home this one night, and Kenny was with her white Shetland friend. And they were in the barn together. And she was eating from the bale. She'd just gone down. And her head was still upright with hay in her mouth and her eyes were closed. And Tim came to get me. Her head was up with her nose like this on the ground. And Tim came to get me and went, I think you better come in. I don't think she's breathing, but I'm not sure. And I came in and there we just stood staring at her going, she's died. But
she was a character, wasn't she?
Wasn't in pain. She was just very old.
Yeah.
And she lived her life with all the others on the track.
She kept going like a creaking gate.
Like a creaking gate. P2, we called her. And here's an interesting thing, P2. She was old. And there were times when I'd be thinking in the winter, she didn't have great teeth. She hardly had any incisors left because she'd been left to graze on this short grass for years and years on her own, had never lived with other animals. And they were hardly non-existent, that she'd overgrazed. And her teeth, the back of her teeth, therefore, weren't good when I had her. So she was always done every 6 months. Her teeth were always done every 6 months. But she had the most amazing feet. And there you go. So she'd nibbled on grass for all that time, but it was Dartmoor grass. So she'd been out on the moors, but in a moorland area paddock. but she had amazing feet. She didn't have a spot of separation. She'd looked after her own feet. I barely trimmed that horse in the 11 years or so that I had her. I barely trimmed her. She just did her own thing, which is good, really, because she wasn't keen to be caught. So that was handy. But yeah, you know, and I would think, I've got to feed her. And occasionally, you know, in those years, because once she'd lost her crest, she got to a sort of she was quite slight, but she wasn't at the very, very end of her life. She got a little bit skinny. She got quite skinny, but in the sort of middle part of the life with me, and I used to think, oh, if I just give her a little bit of food here and there, and I'd falter in the early days, thinking, oh, she needs more food. It made not a blind bit of difference. Never did. So she lived a life eating hay, getting old with her friends. It was lovely, really. Lisa says, started my track today. Perimeter panels are up, just waiting for snow to melt and the ground to thaw. What? Put
Awesome.
pictures up. Mud control mats have been an absolute godsend this winter in very wet West Wales. Oh, yeah. If you can manage to get mud control mats, they work a treat. Quite a few of our students have got mud control mats, and clients in the UK, they love them. And you can make just pathways out of them. Laura's made a pathway out of it going down a hill where it's a bit slippy, mainly for her, and then like a platform at the end where she puts some hay so that at least the horses have got a bit of a distance to go in the winter, and then as the weather dries up, the track expands because they go further on the around. The only reason I put down a surface was because the hubby said if they go down to the matcha sand under the track, it would keep blowing away and the track would just get deeper. Yeah, well, that's true. I'm hoping to put in surface squares so that they can roll and lie down. Lovely. I mean, you're just rocking. You're rocking, girl. Rocking. Any suggestions for a track system where we have 3 foot of snow during a 6-month winter and only have large round bales? Our summer pastures are cultivated with plenty of natural herbs. Yeah, okay. So what you can do is you can put posts in the ground so they're well above the snow, and then hang hay nets from those posts. Would you say so, Gary? Could do that?
Yeah. If you've got any trees, you can always hang hay nets from trees too. A lot of people as well, even though you want your horse to majority feed from the ground, even if they were in snow, very often they actually dig. They actually dig into the snow to actually get to the forage underneath. So that's another option. Clear a space and put the hay there. I'm sure they'll find it. If they're hungry enough, they will. If you've got hedgerows, a lot of people put hay in the hedgerows. So you've got movement, and then they just go and grab the hay out of the hedgerows. What else? I think that's all that comes to mind at the minute.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it must be like to live with that amount of snow for months on end. I'd absolutely love it. And I'm sure when you're living it, you're like, God, snow, go away. But as a kid, I love snow. I should just have to come and visit, Lydia. Joe Tracy Kirk says, once you go track, you never go back. Once you track, man, you never go back, man. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'll tell you something else.
And the horses will tell you whether it's done properly or not.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you something else as well. You have a different relationship with your horses.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine having a situation where I opened a gate and turned them out onto a pasture and that was it. And then maybe once a day I brought them in to go into a stable or something and had to put them back out again, and the hassle of doing that all the time. And also, if you do that to a herd, every single it's stressful. Every time you put them back out again, and even if it's a herd of 2, they have to re-establish their pecking order again, or where they are in their, you know, who the leaders and the ones that are more subordinate. They have to sort that out in their groups again. So that can be a bit stressful. And I can't imagine that anymore. Every day, Gary, me, Rachel, or a combination of that, all the kids go around and we put hay out and we go see them and they come talk to us and we have conversations and and they love it because you're bringing them hay. So they appreciate you. They think you're a wonderful person because here you come with the hay and they're like, I love you. And so they come over and they'll spend time and we could give them a bit of scratching. And then I do a little bit of horsemanship sometimes, a few little bit of bends, teach them the bends, go a little bit sideways, bit of backing up, have a bit of a laugh. They'll come round, the little ones will be like, I know my trick, I back up to you. And then they spin round and we do a bit of liberty. It's fun. And there's never a time, genuinely, there's never a time when I think, oh God, here we go. And I go in there and think, ooh, never. And I forget everything when I'm in there. I just am with them. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't suggest doing, there are certain things I would definitely suggest you don't do. There are some people, and even some track liveries that do this, and they do what they call scatter feeding. So they'll get like bag feeds and every day or nuts, some kind of nut pellet or something, and every single day they'll go out and they'll scatter it to sort of get the horses looking for. You don't need to do that, and that's just complicating things. You don't need to do that. And I have to tell you, the moment you start doing that, you're going to get argy-bargy and you're going to get horses that are a bit not, you don't really want to be in there with them when they're pushing each other out of the way. Occasionally, if we've had like a big meal and we've got loads of cabbage leaves left and loads of carrot toppings and bits and pieces like that, I'll go in and I'll just chuck it over into the tracks. That's great because then they come down and they rummage around and they get it and yum yum yum, and that's all that, and that's nice and you know, thank you very much, Lindsay, for bringing me those lovely little yum yum treats. Does that happen every day? God no, just now and again. But you know something else is they're switched on to you as well. You come out, we come out, and they're like, oh, hello, they're out. And Casimir the donkey with his, immediately you walk out the door in the morning, he stood opposite the door. Because I can see my tracks up opposite the door, and he starts braying. Ooh! And I can hear my partner going, I love you. I love you, Cas. I love you, Cas. And I was like, why don't you say I love you to little Splashy? I don't love Splash. I don't love Splash. Yes, you do love Splash. We all love Splash. So it's just amazing. It is a different vibe. A completely and those people that tell you that you can't have horses all living together, different sizes of horses, you can. And people who say you can't have your sports horses living in there, you can. I had plenty of clients who had horses who did lots of sports. One comes to mind at the moment, and she was one of the ones I showed you some lives ago with the contracted heels, the horse that was in the stable, and the vets were saying, you never come out, you know, he's got to stay in the stable, and he'd been in there months. She completely got converted, and she was a livery yard manager. So she was so traditional, very into dressage, taught dressage. You know, a lovely girl in a mid to late 20s. She had beautiful horses, and they all lived scruffy out on the tracks. And then she'd bring them in and do them up and make them look pretty, and then they go back out on the tracks again. And if you've ever followed Holly Coatsey in Dubai, who set up tracks in Dubai, this massive, great big track in Dubai, she's got what's Connor, and Connor is I think he's a Trakehner Cross TB, something like that, and he was on the front of one of my magazines, and she's written some articles, and he's beautiful, and he's won Longines, I think you say it like that, Longines, a few times, because he's a great show jumper, and his story is incredible because he was going to be put to sleep on the table. He had navicular laminitis, arthritis that they diagnosed, And she took him back. She went, I'm not putting him to sleep, because she was at equine college in the UK. She had him with, she said, it's the way I'm keeping him. It's the way he's shod. I'm taking him away and giving him a chance. She took him back to her family home in Dubai, convinced this sheikh to put up this track, this old riding stables, and created this livery yard on this track surrounded by dunes. And they all lived on this sort of kind of race track, all this beautiful horses. And he was an incredibly beautiful thing. And he recovered everything and went on to be a top show jumper. So it's all very possible. And the relationship you have with your horses is, I'd never do it any other way. I could never imagine doing it any other way now. We only have large bales, so can't manage putting out nets. And by the way, you are both welcome to visit here anytime.
God bless you.
Thank you. I guess the thing
maybe at the end of the snow. No, Lindsay would want to turn up when the snow was there.
I would. I would, Lydia. I guess the thing to say there, Lydia, is, maybe, I know you don't want to waste your hay, but I suppose you either create something that you can divide those bales up and put those into little areas on pallets with little roofs or something to try and encourage more movement, because there's nothing worse than horses just camping out all the time, camping out at one place all the time. That's what we're trying to avoid. Pia says, snow in autumn, we start to wait, and spring, we are so ready to get rid of it. Wow. Gosh. And I can see your avatar's got snow in the background. At least we get a good long break from grass. I couldn't imagine having to deal with green grass all year long, but waiting for the snow to disappear gets frustrating, I'm sure. Well, in Europe, grass really never goes away. Well, particularly in the UK, it's so temperate, the grass just doesn't, it's always there. And it continues to grow as well in the winter. It can be a real problem. I had a lovely play with Missy today. I ran on the field inside the track and she chased me. Then I ran back and she turned around and ran with me. And we had a scratchy session, which she loves. It's lovely. It is brilliant. A different, it's not just, I'm putting up a track. And people go, it's awful because you're keeping them from grass. No. You're encouraging their innate, behaviors. Mother Nature would be very proud of you. She'd be sat there at the head of the board going, these humans are creating track systems, Yes, says Lucy in the background. I sort of suggested that. Well done, Lucy. Marvellous. Some of these domestic horses are doing well. Don't know about the rest of them, poor things. We're going to have to do something about that, she says. Mother Nature sat at the head of her board. So, any questions? 50 minutes talking about tracks. I don't know if I've got anything else I've got all sorts of things I can show you. What else could you add, Gary? See if I can find some more.
I suppose you could do a herb bar. On some places they do buckets in there, and it's clean water, and it might have bentonite clay in one and turmeric in another, salty water in another. There's herb bars. If you're quite a horticulturalist, on sides of the fences you could actually grow herbs as well. That really helps. And then they can choose them if they so desire. And if they don't want them, you can always dry them, especially if you've got somewhere where you can put them out, dry them, and then you can store them for more inclement times of the year. Another thing that some people have done is if you've got big hedgerows and you're having a bit of gardening done, it all started actually for cows, and it's called tree hay. I don't know whether any of you have come across tree hay, and it's basically when you take branches that have got big leaves off and you bale them up with rope, and then you hang them somewhere so they can just dry out over the summer, and then you've got something that you can just put out in the field with your horses, and then they can chew on the bark and they can play with the sticks and they get the dry leaves and all of that. So tree hay is a good idea. So it's almost like it's a waste product when you're having a tidy up, but it can be environment enrichment for a couple of hours, and you don't have to take it to the tip. So tree hay is a good thing.
Kathleen said, hi Kathleen, I had set up a track to let my horses out in the winter once the grass was covered by snow, and we ended up having the most mellow winter ever. The snow never stayed. Plan now is just to try to get rid of grass. Any suggestions? Well, if your track is the right length and it's narrow enough on the traveling areas, then you shouldn't really have too much grass. In fact, if anything, they'll get rid of it quite quickly. If there's a lot of grass growing continually on your track and you cannot keep on top of it, then the track is either too long or too wide in places. So it's about making the traveling areas narrow. Then you've got big loafing areas. It's very tempting, I think, when you've not got, you know, when you're building a track, to make it as big and as long and as exciting as possible. But sometimes that's just too much, because the thing that you're trying to avoid is, well, grass. That's one thing, but you're also trying to encourage movement, I know, but you also need to kind of, if you're going to do that, just make those traveling areas narrow. And it will encourage all these natural behavior patterns and, you know, moving horses on from a pile. We said to a lady the other day, you know, a new client of ours, and she said, I can't put hay in the field. I can't put hay in the field because this horse will just eat all the hay and the others don't get any. And we were like, we'll put more piles out. And she was like, well, she'll just go and push the others off the piles. And we were like, yeah, but if you put plenty of piles out, there'll always be a pile for somebody, because you can't push them off everyone. And one of the reasons horses do that continually in the early days is because they are resource guarding and they want it all for themselves, because they're not used to getting it. And so they think it's going to run out. I've got to get as much of it as possible. Once you start feeding horses like this with hay all the time, they just chill out. You know, that track of mine that I showed you in Cornwall was under 3 acres. I think it was 2.5 acres, and it had 18 horses on it at one point. And you'd walk in and you'd be like, where are they? They'd be so chilled out, and then they'd pot up. Like, you'd wander in and people would be like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm amongst these big horses and little horses, and nobody cares. They come over and go, hi, hello, have you got anything? Oh no, all right, lovely to see you, bye, and wander off. It's a different vibe keeping horses on track. You are so much more involved with your horses. It is quite incredible. I was told I would need planning permission to put a track in the UK if you were going to change the surface. Is this correct? I guess actually it depends. It depends where you are, because there are some places in the UK they will not let you even put a track up. So it just depends where you are. But for instance, in Cornwall, nobody gives two hoots. In many places, nobody really cares. You've got a bit of your own land and you do what you want, or you put rented land, you do what you want. And there's so many places. It's such a rare event that we get told I need planning permission. It's such a rare event that it doesn't even cross our radar very often, to be honest.
We had a friend of ours, and we actually did a workshop there several years ago. We've been there a couple of times actually, and it was a rented property, big property, that had quite a lot of land, and she set it up as a small livery business, and she set up a number of tracks. I think there was 2 or 3. That had different herds on it, and she was thinking, oh my God, what's going on now, because I've got the estate agent coming round and they're going to see that I've got all of this mud and all of that, and she thought, well, I'm just going to have to wing it. Let's make it look as tidy as possible, because obviously the horses were traveling around and the hay was in strategic locations. And the estate agent turned up, and she was having a bit of a panic. And the estate agent turned up and said, oh my goodness. And she said, what? He said, oh my goodness, look how healthy these horses are. And he wasn't really into horses. And she said, and look at the amount of land that is just lovely and green. It's encouraging wildlife. This is probably the best I've seen this land, the majority of the land, the best that I've seen it in all of the times that there have been horses free roaming
Still
the
just
whole
trash the whole lot.
fields, because they trash the whole lot. So she said, yes, it's muddy around the outside, but he says, oh my God, they've only trashed less than 10% of the land. And oh my God, doesn't it look more aesthetically pleasing? Because the fencing is not intrusive. And you can see the horses over there, but you were looking through a pasture to see them. And for somebody that didn't know horses or haven't got any preconceived ideas about putting horses out in paddocks or on tracks, it was just a really interesting response from someone that was looking after a property for someone. And I thought that was really interesting, because yes, horses are heavy. They're on one digit. They do trash a bit of land, but you're trashing less land on a track. And incidentally, she ended up reseeding all of the fields that were the tracks went round, and that was her hay supply. So she ended up having the horses away for a day or two whilst the hay was being made, put them somewhere else, and then once all the hay was made, the horse was back on the track.
Yes, best thing.
Awesome job. Self-sufficient.
Hay, just cut hay in the middle. What about trees? My horses love to eat them, especially the willows. I have fenced them off. Let them.
Willow has got willow is part of the bark has got a natural form of aspirin, a salicylic acid, if I've pronounced that right. So yeah, it's a medicine for them, and they absolutely love it when they need it. It's really good for them. The only thing that I would be wary of with regards to plants is sycamore. That's the only thing that I would be worried about. I've got half a dozen oak trees, and I had acorns falling. Some of my horses would eat them occasionally, and some of them wouldn't even touch them. So I just left them, and there has been no issue whatsoever. So sycamore, I would be cautious of, and it's the saplings that are the risky, and it's not everywhere, but it's just in some places. And it causes a condition called atypical myopathy, which is deadly. I could go into details why they think that is, but it's all to do with climate change, really, and the plants getting more toxic, and the horses not evolving quick enough because the planet's changing too quick for them to evolve just yet.
But don't be afraid. We had ash tree. We had a lot of ash. Not mountain ash, but here we've got prickly ash, and they won't touch that. They won't touch prickly ash.
No.
But ordinary ash is a natural vermicide, and they'll eat the leaves of when the leaves dangling down, and that's great because they can stretch too. They stretch. It's good for their bodies to stretch their big necks up to get stuff, and as they eat it, they're like stretch even further. All of those things are good natural things. We've got to stop trying to sort of micromanage them, really. Have a little bit of faith in them. Suggestions on don'ts when putting up a new track system. Don't have wide. Well, let's do a don't each. Let's do a few don'ts to see how far we can do with the don'ts. Okay. Don't have very wide traveling areas.
Don't put all the hay in one place.
Don't, if you're using rope or particularly tape, one of my pet hates, tie them together in knots. Loads of knots. Because it breaks the little fibers on the inside. That's why we use wire now. We don't use rope at all, or tape. And keep the. We could go on about fencing forever, and don't let them sag. Right, go on.
I'm trying to struggle to think of another don't. I can do lots of do's.
Don't wrap your fencing around the post. Obvious it seems, really, doesn't it? But don't do that because it learns. Don't make sure. Let's do some do's. Do make sure you earth it.
Oh,
Big
yes.
Earthing rod.
Yeah, if it's powered off mains, it's sometimes done through the main earth. But if it's done off battery, you need to have a decent earth rod, at least 1 meter in the ground if you're living in somewhere that's dry, because it needs to hit moisture. Otherwise, the circuit won't make. Another thing for doing is if you've got electric and you're using a battery, you change that battery for a newly charged battery once a week to make sure that it is full power, because your energizer will tell you that it's all nice and green until it gets down to about 10%. And when it's only running at 20%, guess what? Particularly your ponies know it.
So, yeah.
So
and,
change newly charged batteries,
fencing.
change every week. Everything. Good fencing. Yeah. Good housekeeping.
Good housekeeping. Good housekeeping is important. Don't go and be paranoid and scrape up all the poo constantly. Don't need to do that. You just don't. You can encourage them to make stud piles, and the stud piles might be quite big actually, but that's okay. You can gather poo, if you want to, get a barrel load and stick it over here, and then gradually what they will do, and wait when you put up a new trap, wait at least a couple of weeks. And I know you'd be like, oh God, I can't, I've got a pooping. Wait and see where they start pooing, because they will suddenly start creating natural stud piles, what we call stud piles. They'll start creating them, and then you can encourage that even more. You're like, aha, they want to poo in that corner. Damn it, that was a lovely corner I was going to use as a loafing area. No, they want to poo in it. It's their decision. So you just take a bit of poo and add it up there, and gradually they'll go to the toilet. They will walk up. You'll watch them deliberately leaving the other members of the herd, and they walk along, don't they? And then you go, they're going for a poo, and then they get to where they want to do, and they're like, yeah, here will do. I'm at the toilet now. Then they'll stand there, have a poo, turn around, walk all the way back. Honestly, when you see them doing natural behaviors like that, where they poo away from each other or away from where they're eating, they are quite and that we've got a whole area out there'll be areas that they never poo in, like it's sacrosanct, and that you can tell that if somebody poos there, they have their I'm stuck, that I'm sure they all get together and have their board meeting. I'm like, right, who's the one that pooed out on the front of the tracks today? We keep that clean. Who's going to own up? Splash, was that you? Wasn't me. It was far too big for me. Okay, then who was it? It must have been Carmen. She has the biggest poo. She has elephant poos. Carmen, don't do that again. I got caught short. I was on my way to the toilet. I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. Good. Keep it clean, please. Keep it clean. The humans like to see it clean. Maggie says trimmed wilted nettles and cow's poo. Oh yeah, they love
them. They love them. Yeah, really good.
They love that.
And cleavers is a favourite as well. Cleavers, or sometimes called sticky willy. When we were kids, you used to go around and you used to just chuck it at people, and you just turn up at home and it'd be half a bush on your back.
My pony will eat a whole salt block in a day and then drinks gallons of water. I've had to resort to the Himalayan blocks. That's interesting that your pony's doing that. So make absolutely sure that that hay never ever runs out, and that you have a very mixed as you possibly can with that hay. And don't be soaking your hay. Don't do anything like that. There's a reason that your pony's doing that, because that's not normal behavior. Ponies don't really do that. It's not normal behavior. Don't fence willows out. They are nature's painkillers. You got it.
They are.
Salicylic acid. What about conkers? So chestnuts, never been a problem. We got conker trees all the way around. We got chestnut trees all the way around. Not a problem.
I've got walnut trees as well. And what was really interesting with the conkers, and particularly the walnuts would drop, the horses would move around the track, crack the walnuts open, and then as soon as the horses had moved by, the birds would flock down to then take up all of the walnuts. It's awesome. So clever. So clever.
Nature at its best. Red maple leaves are toxic here in the US. Yeah. So if you know then
a lot of plants are toxic because it's part of their defense system, but it's also a medicine too. That happens in the plant world all around. Just like I said about willow. Willow is naturally occurring and it's a natural painkiller. Red maple is it's of the maple family, which is, if it's needed, is an analgesic. It can help with inflamed eyes, and it can help with hives and muscular aches and pains as well. That's just in the human world. So what about if it was for the animal world? The thing being with any plant extract that has a potential to be toxic, and that's a lot of plants, it's if it is in excess. If your horse is hungry and hasn't got free access to good forage, all of these other things that have got a lot of medicine in them also have calories. So if they're being starved, they won't care about the toxicity, because their ultimate thing is to survive. They need calories and they need energy. So that's another reason why there is a lot of misconception about horses or animals toxifying themselves with plants. And that's because there isn't enough forage for them. Interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting. Lydia says, wow, the UK sure is different from Canada. Oh yeah, sure is. My ex-racehorse just poos wherever she happens to be. She is having to learn to be a horse. Oh yeah. Yep. And of course also you need to have when you start having horses come into a herd, they've got to get into the rhythm, got to get into the regime. They're finding their way. When Sarah lets all of her herd out onto the track, they'll be like, I have no idea what's going on here, but we're just going to run around and, oh, there's a bit of hay here. Oh, it's a bit of hay here. Oh, run again. This is what's very exciting. Round. You give a horse a track, they'll go around it all day long. And eventually they settle down. But we get a bit precious. Like, I've just put this beautiful track down. I'm not going to let them poo. And they're literally walking behind them with your wheelbarrow and your poo picker, which is pink, with a pink wheelbarrow. And you don't need to. Let them sort themselves out. Let them find their poo areas. And eventually she'll stop doing that when she works it out. Milk thistle.
Brilliant.
So interesting. I still remember when you came to see my pony, Billy, Gary for his zoo farmer session. It was amazing. For those of you who don't know,
I recognised your name, Megan.
For those of you who don't know, Gary is a qualified zoo farmer cognoscist. Hence the reason he's so clever when it comes to plants. Nova says we get a lot. Hi, Nova, darling. We get a lot of ragwort here in Scotland. My friend calls it hogwort. And ragwort, again, as long as it's not cut and it's dry in the hay, because that can be a problem, Ragworts, they won't touch it. We were going to have a scalped field and you've got these yellow ragworts and they will not touch it. They won't go near. Isn't it interesting? They know. They just know. Again, you know, you put horses into starvation syndrome. Sometimes they'll just eat anything because they're starving. So the obviously we never let the horses run out. There's always something. Always something. The big two are on it already and they choose to stand at the top corner at night. Is that because that's where Squire is, up at the top corner? My mare eats ivy during the autumn and winter, has plenty of hay all the time.
Ivy's got huge amounts of medicinal qualities, really does. Antioxidants being one of them.
She'll look youthful then. Your mare will look very youthful.
It's at certain times of the year as well, but when they have growth spurts and the plant, that is, the different times of the year, it's almost like the animal knows what is needed, but it's only in small quantities because the medicine part is the toxic part of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
But it's if it's in excess that it becomes a problem, and it's only generally in excess when there isn't enough food, because that plant has a calorific value. When you look into any reports of animals suggested to be poisoned by plants, it's usually because it is mixed with food. So very often, I've had one of my clients years ago, one of her horses came down with atypical myopathy, and she was away on holiday, and one of her friends was feeding the horse, and the hay was put under the sycamore tree.
Oh God.
Yeah. So isn't that interesting as well? So when we're, I know we've done the supplement thing to death, but if you end up putting supplements, when you end up putting supplements that are powerful plant extracts into a chaff or into a fat, the choice has been taken away from the animal because they're just going for the calorific value, and you have just added something that is really powerful to the body of that animal. And is it needed? Because if it isn't, it can be detrimental.
Yeah, toxic.
But it's all right because it says on the packet that it's generally recognised as safe.
As safe. Grass.
And I'm going to leave it there. Otherwise, I shall rant.
No, we're not going to rant. We're not going to rant.
No ranting on Easter Sunday.
No, she says it's the opposite corner that I made wider on the track. Brilliant. When are you letting Squire out? We all want to know. We all want to know what's going to happen. Are you too nervous? A bit scared? I noticed
and you need to video it.
Yeah, I noticed yes, sir. I want it live. I noticed my standee seeking out plantain when he had a cut. He was healing. Isn't that interesting?
They've been on this planet way longer than we have.
And, you know, there's so much that we think that we micromanage them. Don't micromanage them. Let them do their own thing. You really need to let them do their own thing. A friend of mine would let her mare nibble by herself because she was afraid that it would poison itself. They're not going to. They're really not going to. They know when things are tasting right or wrong to them and whether they need it or not. What about borage? My IR Cushing's Welsh pony seems to love it. Fine.
I would say it'd be fine. Yeah.
Let them love it. Let them love it. If you are putting out enough fiber for them and their guts, because we don't know, we still don't know. And yet again, today I was on that same bandwagon where I was trying to get across to these people that I was talking to, if anybody saw it, about the microbiome. We don't know. We know more about the bottom of the ocean and the surface of the moon and Mars than we do of the microbiome in the gut. We don't know enough. We're only just scratching the surface with humans, for goodness sake. We haven't got a clue about a monogastric hindgut fermenter. We've not a clue. That cecum is massive and filled with trillions of bacteria for a very good reason. They give the nutrients the horse needs. And one of the things, and this will end on this, I think, will end on this, is that you will hear everywhere at the moment that, and we've done a live on it, we've talked about it, but you will hear people constantly talking about vitamin E, and that hay, when it's cut, loses vitamin E. Now it does. And you can there's ways you can avoid that by keeping it in the dark as well, because light degrades it too. But they'll say that horses, therefore, because they've tested hay and they can tell that vitamin E is lacking in hay, so therefore all horses need to be supplemented. But they're not looking at it the right way round. And also, these are horses that are supplemented that don't need it. We know that a tremendous amount of supplements just gets peed out. And vitamin E, if it's in its synthetic form, it's not readily absorbed by the body. And obviously, it's fat soluble. The natural form of vitamin E is, and it's not so easy to get the natural form. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is even if your hay is low in vitamin E, if your horse is healthy and not showing any signs, and you could do a blood test if you like, but your horse is in healthy state, what is going on in the body that we don't know about? Because we know that those microbes we already know they make the entire B12 complex. We know that they will add to vitamin C. We know that that vitamin D is made in the body. We know that. So why would we think that A and E and K, they know that vitamin K is made as well. So why would we think that they're not going to be able to make these vitamins? Because more research needs to be done. But you will wait forever for this research to be done, because it just doesn't happen. It just won't happen, because it's only just started in humans. But there is a hysteria around equine nutrition, and the hysteria has got to stop, because what we see and what's actually happening in the world is that there are more horses that are overweight and obese and are dying from laminitis and colic than they are of vitamin deficiencies. And if you are somebody who wants to put vitamins and supplements into your horse's diet, then you have to make sure that you know if your horse is lacking, because like Gary said, anything can become toxic, or it's just peed out and excreted, as they know that happens too. So, it's important to understand, it's important to embrace these healthy animals and go, well, something else is going on, because these guys are fine. And we all know what happens when you want to feed a supplement. You don't just feed the supplement, do you? You get a carrier to feed it in, and then a bit of chaff and a bit of that. And Gary and I were saying yesterday, actually, we were stood by our big round bales. I took out
this sarcastic conversation.
I took out a piece of Coxfoot orchard grass, and I said, look, just this one piece, I'm going to make some chaff. And I basically broke it up into bits, and I had like quite a substantial amount in the palm of my hand, which looked quite pretty because it had the heads of the orchard grass in there as well. And I said to Gary, I wonder how many bags we could get out of a bale of that. So Gary's like, what did you say? So what's 15 kilos? Are they that heavy?
15 kilos a bag. And a big round bale was between about 250 and 300 kilos. Stick it through a macerator to make it all chopped up nice and small. Chuck in a handful of herbs, maybe a little bit of essential oil. Stick it in a bag and sell it for 20 quid.
So that's 20 bags.
At 20 quid.
It's £400 a bale, and we pay
we spend €24, which is about 22 quid.
That's £400 you're paying for a bale of hay, a big round bale of hay, and we pay 24 euros here. Even if you paid €50.
Clever marketing. You can do it yourself, and you don't need to.
Nobody ever thinks of
And
that.
you can do it. You just search for a decent supplier of hay, and the more that you search, the more that the farmers will see that there is a demand. And you say, oh my God, I've had 10 phone calls this week from all of these ladies and gentlemen that want mixed meadow hay with no rye in it. And they want some wildflowers in it and all of that as well. The more that they get asked, guess what? The more that they'll supply.
Absolutely. Right, let's just quickly whiz through these last ones. And don't forget, horses can't be sick, so they're extra brilliant at knowing what's safe to eat. Emily, wow, I didn't realise about Avi. My youngster keeps pulling me over to it when we walk past a particular hedge. I'll let him have more of a munch next time he pulls me over. Sarah says Tuesday he is released. Need to finish last bit with electric fencing, waiting on the delivery. I bet it's a total non-event. Just stand still. It won't. No, I think he's going to go mad. That pony has a mean buck. Nettles have vitamin E. Yeah. Brilliant. Chuck them on in there. Cut them down and throw them in. What about selenium, and how much do horses need, and what happens if the horses don't get enough of it? Selenium is a mineral. Out of all the minerals, selenium is the one mineral with the very narrowest range of tolerance, interestingly enough. In other words, you can easily go too much and you can easily go under it. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, but you can easily make it toxic. Now, this is really interesting because supplements have to be grass, right? Generally recognized as safe. They have to be. So they know that selenium has not got a wide window of tolerance. And yet you can buy the same selenium supplement as me, Gary, lady down the road who keeps her horses on grass all the time, somebody else who keeps their horses in a stable. We can all buy the same selenium because it's not bespoke. 99% of supplements are not bespoke. So what is that saying? Is it saying that the available selenium that's in that supplement is actually not bioavailable for that horse particularly, probably going to get peed out? Or is it that it's in such tiny quantities, it's not going to make a difference anyway, but you've been told it will? Or is it too much and you're going to make them toxic? It's a problem, selenium, but you have to do blood tests. And when you've done that, you have to be targeted. And when you've targeted, you have to do a profile and keep looking. Or you go and get good hay. But you see, a lot of people say, well, selenium is we haven't got good selenium in the soil. They're not eating the grass. They are eating the hay, but it's the fiber that's important. And that selenium is so small. Are you able to supplement that with a salt block, etc.? I'm 65 a bale. Oh la la! Still, it would be 400 a bale if you were doing it out of bags of chaff with nice, pretty plastic covering with pretty pictures all over it. £60 plus for a big bale of hay here. Horrendous. This is you guys on the islands, this.
It is on the islands. They have to have it shipped in, don't they?
All right. That was lovely. We went well over. What's wrong with us? Easter Sunday, an hour and a half. Nuts. Right. We'll see you tomorrow. Been lovely. Thank you for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it. Bye-bye now.
Take care.
Bye.
See ya.